Hey guys, subscribe for daily content, and if you're shopping for gear, make sure you check out the description for the newest items at some of the very best online retailers. There's also links for some of the items that I personally recommend. Thanks!
What's going on, YouTube? Metal Complex here, and today I've got another interesting knife review slash knife overview to share with you guys. This is the Kansept Havorn, or Havorn, I believe. I don't know exactly how to pronounce this. That's how I'm going to pronounce it. I'll let you guys look at the box right here. Havorn. I don't know what that O with the circle through it means, but I'll let you guys tell me. This is an interesting knife designed by Jin Designs. I think that's how you pronounce Jin. The only reason I think that I know how to pronounce that is from playing Golden Sun when I was a kid on the Game Boy Advance. What a great game. Anyways, that's who the designer is. I'm not familiar with the designer, but this is a cool knife, and in typical Kansept fashion, you have the choice of their 9CR, 10CR Damascus, at least if they're still using the same stuff, which will have performance very, very similar to like VG10, which is fine, and it looks really cool. Or you can get S35VN for essentially the same price. I mean, the base price of this knife, titanium, the cool carbon fiber, right, and Damascus, I think it comes in at $170 or $175 for S35VN. They have more expensive versions of it, but not bad at all. Kansept just doing a good job with pricing. So I'll link this into the description. You guys can check it out if you want to. Thanks to my patrons for supporting me. Let's go ahead and measure this knife. The overall length coming in at, I bet it's 8 inches. Yep, 8 inches on the dot, full-size knife. That's really cool. 3.5-inch blade, 3.5 inches of cutting edge, too. How about some size comparisons? Any custom skills you find in this section can be found down in the description under Original Goat and Others. Up against the 8010 and 8020.5, it's obviously much larger than the 8020.5. It's actually got the same amount of cutting edge as the 8010 with a much smaller and less robust profile. Let's go ahead and put it up against the Spyderco PM2 and the Spyderco Para 3. I don't know why I'm doing my radio voice today. Here it is. Way more cutting edge than something like the PM2. Just way, 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 way more. I really like the ratios on this knife. And then finally, let's put it up against the Benchmade grip cylinder, in this case, the Ritter Hogue and the Hogue Deca. So there we are. All right. How's the action on this knife? It does run on bearings. Plenty of access on the titanium frame lock. I really like that. No double clutch. And we have a good, like, kind of tight out of the box action, but nice and smooth and consistent. You have a light switch flipper tab back here. Definitely, if you push button it, the front flipper will come around and poke you in the finger. It won't hurt. It'll just stop the knife from flipping. So this is light switch or front flipper, which it does work really well. I mean, that thing snaps. Holy moly. You do have to keep your finger out of the way of the rear flipper tab, but yeah, that works really, really well. It feels good. There's nothing here that is out of the ordinary. It's pretty typical. The detent strength, I think, is pretty good for this knife. And the flipper tab, while a little bit pokey, isn't uncomfortable. So yeah, we're good to go there. Let's go ahead and do carry profile thickness up against the Spyderco Para 3. You can see here it's slightly thinner length and height up against the PM2 and the Para 3. This really wasn't an issue for me in the pocket. I spent, maybe 36 total hours carrying this knife. It's very, very similar to other. I mean, a lot of people get on me. They're like, you don't spend enough time with the knives to really review them. And I would counter that by saying these knives, as a knife reviewer who has 4,500 uploads, these knives are built so unbelievably similar to each other, right? And I have handled so many Kansept knives. You start to get a feel for which companies can do which locking systems the best and which ones have a hard time with other locking systems, right? I am a design reviewer, so I'm not really like the outdoorsy, crazy, like hyper abuse testive type of reviewer, right? I don't do that type of stuff. I'm just a normal guy, right? I like to look at the designs. But as far as figuring out whether or not the locking system is going to be reliable for a particular brand or a particular knife, a lot of times deductive reasoning from handling so much stuff from all of these different companies, right? I mean, Kansept alone, I've probably got close to 100 Kansept reviews. You just kind of familiarize yourself with them, right? So in this case, they know how to do a frame lock, right? Their frame locks are going to hold up to like your standard stuff. So we're good to go there. But yeah, 36 hours with this thing in the pocket total, not consistent. I don't sleep with it in my pocket, but maybe you do. Let me know in the comments. Do you sleep with your pocket knife? I don't, but interesting. The carry profile was fine for me, is ultimately what I'm saying here. I didn't have an issue with it. It didn't, nothing about this, the profile was screaming at me while it was in the pocket. It's very similar to carrying the PM2. It's just a little heavier because the standard PM2 is not in titanium. But lengthwise, it's longer than the Para 3, not quite as tall. Definitely a little bit shorter than the PM2. For materials on this guy, we have titanium. We've got the Arctic fat carbon, and then we have the Damascus blade steel, which is really, really cool. It is an actual pattern weld Damascus, not original Woots, right? There's always like one guy. An opportunity to teach this gentleman and his community about the history of Woots. Save it. This is pattern welded modern Damascus again, 9CR, 10CR combination. It looks cool and it's going to perform pretty well, right? It's not going to be as hyper performance as some of the premium stuff, but it'll perform just fine. Their S35EN, if you're looking for more of a performance blade, is definitely going to be the way to go. But anyways, the weight on this guy, do we have any milling for weight reduction? We do. We have a little bit of milling for weight reduction. By the way, it does have a titanium clip and titanium backspacer. The weight on this guy is coming in at an unsurprising 4.6 ounces, which is pretty good. Not perfect ratios, but pretty good, right? You do get a good amount of blade, and it is a full tie frame. Balance is actually back here a bit. I can't say that it feels butt heavy. Honestly, it feels pretty good. It's a comfortable knife, which we'll talk about here, but the balance is just a little bit off. So let's go ahead and move. Oh, no, we can't do that. We have to do the hardware check. I'll get out my tools as per usual. My tools are very inexpensive and very recommendable. You can find them right down in the section of my description that talks about the tools I use in this channel or the pinned comment. The pivot is a T8. The body screws are unfortunately a T6. Same with the inlay screw. And then you have a hidden screw underneath here, which is probably also a T6. But still, minimal hardware, pretty easy to get into as long as you have the right tools for the job. You should be good to go. Let's go ahead and measure the blade stock thickness real quick, and then we can move in to the meat and potatoes. 120? 115? Yeah, a little less, 113,000. So on the thinner side. Okay, meat and potatoes time. This is a pretty comfortable knife, right? Pocket clip is pretty, it's like a little past the halfway point. It's not pointy or sharp or anything like that. It's milled, it's flat, right? But truthfully, it is comfortable, and there's jimping, functional jimping that extends out to where you would want it to. You can choke up on top of this. I wouldn't recommend it. I think that's a good way to cut your finger, but you can if you want to. Honestly, the standard grip is pretty comfortable. The thing that drives me nuts about this knife is the same thing that's driving you guys nuts, and that's the fact that the other side of the knife not only doesn't have an inlay, it's not textured, but the pocket clip is. That drives me crazy. And, with Hinderer knives, they did that, and I was like, oh, it's not that big of a deal. And then the more I thought about it, I was like, yeah, why is it not textured, right? And now, whenever I look at my Hinderer knives, I'm like, God, that's just really annoying. Just texture both sides. Why, Kansept? Why didn't you texture? This is cool. I love this texturing, right? It's like a zoomed in fingerprint. I really wish that it was on both sides. It's okay. Like, it's also kind of annoying that there's no inlay here, right? But I think I would have been fine without the inlay if we had just textured this side. Like, just keep it going. It looks like they forgot to do it. It's so weird, especially with the pocket clip not being textured, but okay, right? Should that be a deal breaker? I mean, if you hate this so much, if you're like, aesthetically, I cannot handle that, I can't really blame you, right? But I don't think it should be a deal breaker, but if it is to you, then I get it, right? Sometimes this carbon fiber looks good, sometimes it doesn't. Just pick the version of the knife that you like best. But this is a nice material, and it's not a cheap material. It's certainly not like hyper expensive, but it's not a cheap material, and the inlay work on this I think is really nice. The black hardware is a little bit weird. I think it probably would have looked better to just match the backspacer, which is inexplicably blue. But that's not the right word to use there. But yeah, the black hardware really stands out in an awkward way, but okay. The blade looks good. It's a nice, I guess, do we want to call this like, it's not really a trailing point. I'm not going to call it a drop point either. I'll let you guys, decide what you want to call this blade. But it's got a reasonably thin cutting geometry down here. It's nice and sharp. Kansept knows how to do a good edge. It's definitely got a sharp tip. Not going to be the type of blade that you're going to want to abuse, but it will cut, it will slice just fine, right? And you've got a lot of blade. The blade to handle ratio on this is really, really nice. And I feel like knives that have a really good blade to handle ratio will always look nice to the vast majority of people, and this knife has it, right? Couple that with the fact that it's very easy to manipulate and fun to manipulate, has a good detent, and is very easy to disengage. You just have a recipe for a good knife here, right? There's a backspacer, like I said, it's pretty big and it's blue. There's not really much to say there. No lanyard hole, that's fine. The pocket clip is interesting that I like that it's textured. It just makes me, it's like, why isn't the rest of it textured? It's odd. In and out of the pocket's fine, the retention's fine. It's just plain tie over here. It just looks really boring. Your stop pin is actually internal. It's attached to the blade, runs on channels carved out on either side of the titanium frame. No blade play up, down, left, or right. No lock stick, no double clutch, no pivot lash. Smooth and consistent in here with a nice clicky detent. I think we're actually off-centered a little bit. Yeah, to the right. Not by a ton. It's more of I think it might be more of an optical illusion. No, we are slightly off-centered to the right. Let's see if I can turn the pivot. It might just be that it's slightly loose, right? In which case you can just turn the pivot and Loctite it. Or it might need to be completely reset with the body screws. That's a pretty tight, I almost spit on the knife, spit on myself. It's a pretty tight pivot. I think that's just slightly off center, just a hair. Did I actually adjust it? This feels identical. If it is off, it's just off. I don't know. I feel like I've got it center now. Okay. Any detent lash? No. $170, honestly. Yeah, it's typical Kansept, right? It's not a perfect design. It's not like it's blowing my socks off or anything like that, but it is nice to look at, right? You can get some cool materials if you want to. The S35EN version is cool. It's if you like the look of it, it is functional. I think it's a good tool, and it's a reasonable price tag. You have a bajillion options from Kansept and a number of other companies at this $175 price point. So it's a good price, but it's got so much competition. There's nothing here that makes it stand out against its competition, even for the money. So if you like it, yeah, it's a good knife, right? But is there a reason to pick this over any number of other knives that are priced similarly? Not really. But that's okay. It's a good knife, right? Generally speaking, I would say recommendable. Nothing to beat down doors over, trying to get. So I'll link it in the description if you want to pick it up. Please make sure to follow me on Instagram at metal_complex and on TikTok at _metal_complex. If you enjoyed this video, leave a like. If you'd like to check out my other content, I do, of course, have lots of videos of knives that are either expensive or inexpensive that I do or don't like, so check those out. And if you enjoy all my content, go ahead and click on that Metal Complex logo right there and subscribe because there's definitely more coming. Thanks again for watching, everybody, and have a great day.